We did a lot of marketing for this event today, especially because one, the NAR settlement is basically what, 2 more days. There's a lot of confusion with buyers, sellers, confusion with agents. If you go through all of the Facebook groups right now, the big groups, there's still a lot of questions about what's going on. And the biggest thing that I've seen is agents are scared and they feel like they're not going to make any money. So we picked today's topic. How can you still make millions, right? How can you still make money in real estate through this wave? And of course, we got you here today. Why don't you introduce yourself really quick? Tell us who you are. Why should we even pay attention to what you have to say, your opinions today? And let's get going with that.
Yeah, well, thank you. My name's Andrew Undum from Baltimore, Maryland. Should you pay attention to me? I don't know. Maybe you shouldn't, but I have a team here in Baltimore called the Sure Sales Group, and we typically do almost 200 million in sales a year, 400 to 500 units. And we're excited about the change because that's kind of really the only option you have. See, it's either there's two choices in life. You either blame or take responsibility. And what I see a lot of people doing are blaming right now. They're blaming NAR. They're blaming the other lawyers. They're blaming the MLSs. Blaming doesn't get you anywhere, ever. So the alternative is you take responsibility and say, you are response-able. You can form your own response to this and move forward powerfully. And anytime there's a change, I don't care what it is, even small changes with forms, it's an opportunity for you to showcase value to the marketplace and say, hey, did you know this? This is how we're interpreting it. And this is how we can use this to your advantage, Mr. or Mrs. Client. Just so happens it's a massive change. There's massive opportunity for those who want to get after it and change just a little bit of the process, just a little bit of a process change. People are still going to be buying and selling homes. The question is, are they going to be buying and selling them with you? So it's kind of crazy right now. It started like, what's today's? In 2 days, it goes live here in Maryland. They already changed the MLSs. So we're in the throes of it. But again, we're excited.
Yeah, here in California too, they've already gave us new forms for the listing agreement, buying agreement. They started that back in July 22nd, 23rd. They pushed new forms. They pushed a lot of content on how agents should start navigating the process. I don't believe our MLSs, all of them have completely removed the commission side of things. And I know a few of the MLSs are going to add a separate field, but I don't think a lot of the MLSs here in California are going to do that. And of course, right, like you said, either you embrace the change and work through it, or like I've seen a lot of memes out there right now, everybody bailing, right? Going back to a 9 to 5, they're gonna want to wait it out. Us personally, we're building a team here in California as well. We've seen a little decline in conversations with New York agents trying to enter the market, and those who are entering the market don't even know what's going on with this new stuff.
Yeah, it's the best time ever to bring fresh blood into the industry. No bad habits. They don't feel entitled to getting X% when they show up and fog a mirror and write an offer. So that's something I'm excited about. Anyone starting a team, running a team, I always found that the best people come from outside the industry. And not a lot of people want to train a new agent. They want Debbie, who has 20 years of bad habits for some reason, because she can type the offer in properly. It's so backwards. You have to do a little bit of the work up front, but it's a great opportunity. And I know a lot of people are scared. And look, if all you do is work with buyers, and there's nothing wrong with that, it could be scary because we don't know yet how this is going to pan out. It feels to me like they've kind of thrown a wrench in free market capitalism here, because this was always the most entrepreneurial, free market type thing you could do, because no seller has to list the house. We all know for sale by owners are a big thing. Off-market properties sell all the time. Here in Baltimore, a lot of stuff sells off the market with no realtor, real estate agent, period. So it's just going to be very interesting to see how the cookie crumbles. But I know for a fact that the best agents are going to make a lot more money.
And that's
And
usually the case, right? The ones that stick
and
around.
and those mediocre agents or average agents who don't really have great skills, but they worked hard. Maybe they're making 80, 100K and they were working with buyers all the time, but they didn't have the skills because they were dependent on Zillow or an online lead platform. And all they knew is if I show up and these people like me enough to let me write an offer for them, you're guaranteed to get paid a nice chunk. That's gone. So it's going to be, the cream's going to have to rise to the top. And again, you got to be careful what you say on these things. I mean, I did one of these, went kind of like wild on YouTube, and then I get called from the LA Times and they're trying to get me. They're saying, you said that you wouldn't go below 2.5 and you advised people to stop talking after you said that. That's what they called me. And I said, yeah, well, sometimes you have to stop talking. Like after you ask a question, you stop talking, right? I was just emphasizing that. Anyway, so we do have to be careful because look, I'm not a lawyer and every state's different and Maryland's different. And our MLS happens to be this massive one that's got like PA, Maryland, Virginia, DC. It's called Bright and they do a great job. But even those, our friends at the MLSs are kind of like rolling their eyes thinking, wow, we're doing a lot of work for nothing to appease this settlement. So I'll go on record saying a little disappointed in the early settlement. And that is what it is. But I'm not blaming anybody. This is the new rules. I'll play the game better than you. That's the game. You set the rules, I'll play the game. How about that?
That's it. That's it, Andrew. And like I tell Robert, and it's funny when you just said that the agent who's dependent on Zillow, Truly, and all these companies that give them these free leads for a small cut. What happened if that went away? I always tell the agents that I work with that you have to go back to the basics, right? Door knocking is great to brand yourself in that area. And you don't have to do the whole zip code because you're in California. I think we have like 80 something counties, right? It's a big state. Another thing to do is open houses right now. I told Robert that open houses are gold. A lot of these agents are not showing up with their clients because like they had to get that 9 to 5 or they're doing, DoorDash or Uber to take care of their families, which I'm all for it. But at the same time, you also got these people that are showing up that need an agent, that need direction, that need somebody to hold them by the hand and walk them through the process. So the market right now, like you said, Andrew, I like it myself as well because it's uncertain. And I believe, and we all know here, that when you're comfortable is not a good place. You need to be uncomfortable because that's where growth is going to take place. And that's why my clients is mostly expires and for sale by owners. Now, if you go back 20 years, I had this conversation with Mike Ferry is expires been around for the last 20, 30 years, right? And those are people who raise their hand that unfortunately their house didn't sell for a couple reasons. And I'm just like you, Andrew and Robert. I don't want to say something. I don't want the Los Angeles Times calling me. Why'd you say that, Alfred? But we all know mostly why the house didn't sell, right? The price of the condition, and I won't say the third thing, but I always go after expires. And I went to a listing appointment this Monday, and I got the first objection from the client. She's like, Alfred, I'm so happy that I only have to pay you and I don't have to pay a buyer agent. And when I told her, hey, I said, I agree with you, Natalie. Did you know if you look in that contract in the last 15, 20 years, you did not have to ever pay that commission fee, but a lot of people don't read the contract. I said, but let me ask you this, Natalie. You're going to hire me to sell your house, and I'm going to bring you an offer. But let me ask you this. Would you want one offer or 10 offers? Right? You want 10 offers because the more offers, the more eyeballs, the more money in your property. Now, you paying a buyer commission is very important because we might have buyers looking at this area that are fully qualified, even cash buyers that are ready to buy your house. And my fiduciary duties to you. But what happens if an agent from an outside office brings me the buyer? I would hate for you to turn them away. Because remember, what's more important is how much you pay us in the commission or how much I net you after selling your house. And then I address it that way. And she's like, oh, okay. I just heard all this in the news and CNN and all this stuff. And Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong. I think us as agents, we also are the ones gossiping about this. NAR, 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 NAR. Like Robert said, I've seen hundreds of memes. I'm a part of over 100 groups in real estate, and the only people talking about it is us. It's kind of weird.
It is weird. And like going back to something you said, you want to be uncomfortable. You do have to have this unsatiable appetite for growth and pursuing the next level, whatever that is for you. I do believe that's very important. You don't want to be at homeostasis. You always want to be growing. You're either getting better or getting worse every day. And if you get sucked into the doom and gloom, you're probably not sharpening your skills and getting better in front of clients. You're just replaying tapes in your head that are going to ingrain a negative thought pattern. However, I always like to say you have to be comfortable when you're talking to a client, because if you're not comfortable, you'll never make them comfortable. You see, if you're not comfortable, you're robbing yourself of having the greatest gift, which is conviction in what you're offering, in your process. Because whoever's more certain in any interaction will influence the other person every time. So if you are certain in the path forward, that other person will likely be influenced by that path forward, as long as you're not saying something blasphemous. So I think a lot of agents are not comfortable with talking about money. See, the whole listing agents always had to do it. And I think the listings are even more so than before. Man, those are nice to have.
Yeah.
those are going to be even more nice to have, because I do believe a lot of buyers with maybe misguided, they'll just want to go directly to the listing agent, and that's their prerogative. They could have done that in the first place. We used to see that all the time before all the changes. Well, I'm just going to call the listing agent. Okay, go ahead. But the buyer's agent, you see, they never had to know how to sell, because the consumer always wanted the product. You don't have to sell them on the product. They want a house. They want to move for whatever the reasons are. The schools, they don't like where they live now. They're renting, doesn't matter. They want the product. And what you're actually selling them is a service. You're not selling them a house. You're selling yourself as a guide on that journey to get the house. Well, that was so easy because you never had to talk about money. And people were dumb enough to say, like, I work for you for free. No, you don't. And that was a big topic in the NAR settlement, which I think they got right, which is, no, you buyer's agents don't work for free. You can't tell the buyer you're working with them for free. Absolutely not. But they've never been conditioned, because they didn't have to sell themselves. They never did that. And that's the big difference. So there's going to be buyer's agents who crush it. And the big opportunity also is you have 2 bites at the value apple now, because your income's not predetermined by the listing agent. Make it 3, make it 4, make it 2, make it 1, make it whatever you want, because it's always and always will be negotiable. That's not changing, but you get to set what it's worth. And as long as you explain that buyer's agency agreement properly, you just need the right to be able to negotiate your fee with the seller. You don't necessarily have to say, hey, buyer, no matter what happens, you have to pay me X. I mean, you could do that. That's kind of a tough sell. I sold $3 million homes last week. A couple of them were my friends. Imagine if I said, hey, Robert, you want to go look at this house? Yeah, here. Make sure, no matter what, you're going to give me 25 G's, right? You're going to tell me to fuck off. Yeah. Probably. So you have to work on that in a logical, reasonable style. And then when the time's right, go through all of the components of value you bring to the relationship that most people aren't familiar with on the journey to buying a new home. And I think that's where all the value is. That's what we always hear. You have to showcase your value. Everyone says that. Every coach is just screaming that, show your value, but they don't tell you how to show your value. Mm-hmm. And no one can tell you how to show your value, because everybody's different. The way I do it's going to be different than the way you guys do it. And we're both right, probably. But you don't have to be someone else. You have to be yourself, be comfortable with who you are. And guess what? A lot of agents don't bring value, and those are the ones freaking out. And as they should be. That's a very normal thing. Oh
yeah,
my
those
God,
are the ones.
Yeah.
They're the ones spreading all this stuff. You're absolutely right. The ones that are doing the memes and the videos and the reels of all this stuff. But yeah, you're absolutely right. They have to learn how to sell.
Got to learn how to sell.
Yeah, I think the biggest issue, right, like you mentioned, Andrew, was that the fact that prior to this, buyer agents would always say, "Oh, you don't have to pay me," right? Like what you said, I'll get compensated from the seller. And like you said, it was a set number. You would just go into the MLS. Okay, this listing will pay me 2%, 2.5%, 1%, and whatever that was already predetermined. But one of the things that you just mentioned that just came to me is now that doesn't have to be the rule anymore because you could bring it into the offer, right? Like we have to now. But let me ask you this, Andrew. What else do you think a buyer's agent can do right now? I know you mentioned nobody can tell you how to provide value, but what are the things that you could highlight? Because I know I saw a couple of your videos before, and that's one of the things that you do, right? Buyer's presentations. How do you make them? Because before, hey, we're listing agents, we have to have a listing presentation. Buyers, sometimes you don't even have to explain the process. You just get them on the phone, talk to them a little bit, connect them to your lender, and you move on, right? But now, how important is it to have a buyer's presentation in your, what do you think about that?
Well, I'm glad you asked that because after I did this last video, it's 3 weeks ago. It gets like 2,000 views a week. It's got 40,000 views now. I'm getting inquiries every day from agents around the country. Can I get your buyer presentation? Back like 2 years ago, I did this one on listings and it went really well. And I did a couple big events and people always wanted the listing presentation, which I have right here. This is our listing one right here. It's the Sure Group home marketing system, you see. And this is gold.
That's beautiful.
And and it's hardcover. You take it with you. You don't leave it there. But the thing is, you as the agent are the presentation. People miss this. You bring in a slideshow or a booklet or whatever, that's worthless. That's called a crutch. That's called somebody who doesn't know what they're talking about and say, oh, let me see here. Oh yeah, let me talk about this. Because you don't know it. You're not unconsciously competent about it. So when you're talking about a presentation, and I agree, you have to say something, right? You have to show up, but they're buying you. They're going to buy the house. We don't know what house they're going to buy. And just like the seller's selling this house, but they're buying who's the person that's going to help me sell this and maximize my equity. You are the presentation. So you have to have this down and you just write out everything you're going to do. I always do it. I like a blank piece of paper is the only thing you need. If you're unconsciously competent. Now, it doesn't mean you have to start that way. And it's okay to have some certain things you want to show off. I like to play the game called show, don't tell. I show them some things that we're going to do. And you pull up your phone and say, see this, this is how we do that. But on the buy side, if you just look at it linearly, what I'd start with now, after some bonding and rapport, right? We like each other. We're laughing. Hey, how you doing? You can't make anyone else comfortable unless you're comfortable with yourself. Most agents go in there pretty nervous. If you're feeling nervous and awkward, guess what? You're making them feel nervous and awkward. We've all had that experience. This guy's so uncomfortable. He's making me uncomfortable. So if that is you, which is okay, just be aware of it, because then you're consciously incompetent, way better than being unconsciously incompetent. I don't even know how bad I suck. There's people in that bucket. Get out of there. Move to, okay, at least I know I don't know. And we got to get you over all the way over to, you don't have to think about it. You know what you're talking about. And once you have a little rapport, you have to explain the 3 major agreements that govern a real estate transaction now more than ever. Used to, maybe you didn't have to do this as much pre this NAR settlement, but I think this is critical when you explain, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, there are 3 major contracts that govern every real estate transaction. If it's okay with you, I'd like to just take a quick minute to go over them to make sure you're aware of how this works. No one says no. There's a listing agreement between the seller and the listing agent. Okay, that's just between them. It has nothing to do with us. Then there's a buyer's agency agreement between a buyer and a buyer's agent. You're always touching yourself. Between you and a great buyer's agent. Okay. And there's a purchase contract between the buyer and the seller. This business is about contracts and power players, and those are the 3 contracts. Okay, so and we can go into depth on that a little bit more, but I want to for brevity, I'm not going to dive into all the nuances of that. So I like to pull out an actual purchase contract and start filling it out. We're not even talking about a house, just so they know. Hey, look, you put 400K in here, your settlement date here, and contingency there, and they love it and they see it now. Oh, we're all comfortable. This is easy. I get it. Seller's got an agent. I got an agent, and there's a purchase contract. That's all it is. Okay, so once you table that, so you're going to come back to that when you want to close it out. But you have to let them know this is how this world works. This is common sense stuff. But people are so worked up about it that they skip over it, and they're whatever's buzzing in their head, they're freaking out. No, don't freak out. That's what it is. Now, some of the things that a great buyer will do, and what a great buyer's agent will help a buyer do to build equity before they buy a house, because that's what we want our clients to do. We want them to move into equity. We want to put you in the best position possible and get you what you want in a manner that's going to set you up for success in the future and have you say nice things about me on the internet. The only way we can do that is if you really understand this process, because we want our clients to know more than most real estate agents by the time this is done. And most often they do. Starts with a pre-approval. And then we can go into this. And I covered a lot of this on the other video, but there's a lot of value you can provide just in that first step. What a lot of agents do is they punch you off to their partner or whoever they're working with, and then they follow up with the partner. Did you get a hold of them? Can they qualify? What's going on? That's not value. That's not value. So you say, depending on if there's any critical dependencies on the financing, which normally they are, between how much money you want to part with, just because you have $1 million doesn't mean you want to spend $1 million. You have to figure out what down payment options and loan options are the best for you. And guess what? Every mortgage company has different products. So sometimes the bank can offer a better product than the credit union, and the mortgage broker can offer this product that's better in each unique circumstance. So you really have to understand what is available to you. In our market, based on your occupation, there's great deals for nurses. There's different programs for lawyers. The physician loan for doctors is unbelievable. Depending on what your median income is within certain census tracts, there's free money available. So there's like 100 of these things, but you just start hitting them. So I'm not sure if any of this is relevant to you because we haven't talked about it yet, but my goal is to ask you a lot of questions so I can point you in the right direction. So A, we're going to get you the lowest interest rate, take care of any special program that's available to you, and then have this loan officer, whichever one offers the best product for you. And guess what? It might not be the best for your neighbor, but it could be the best for you based on any number of factors. We're going to get this loan officer and we're going to have them verify all your assets. This is important. When you do a mortgage application with one of these companies, they're going to want to pull your credit and ask you some questions. We're going to take it 5 steps further. Send them everything. They're going to want your W-2s, your bank statements, your investment accounts, everything. So everything's verified. And now we have a verified pre-approval and a lender who knows how strong you are and your purchasing power is established. So that person's on our team. So when we actually find a house, me, you, and the lender can kind of coach that seller on how to talk, the listing agent on how to talk to their seller on how qualified of a buyer you are. Most buyers agents don't do this. Most buyers don't do this. And that's why they lose offers. We're not going to let you do that. Okay, so that's just one piece. Now there's 20 of those pieces, but just on that pre-approval, see, that's a different conversation. I'm a guide. I'm your steward. Hop on Noah's Ark. Let's go. No one's talking to them like that. You know, want to know why? Because they're so freaked out about saying, oh my God, what if I have to ask them to pay me something? No. You don't talk about the money until after you've shown all the value.
Man, I'm hearing gold. When you're talking, Andrew, I'm like, my ears are ringing. It's super awesome what you're covering because you're absolutely 1000% right. A lot of these buyer agents don't do buyer presentations, or like you say, they just pan them off to the lender. Hey, are they qualified? They don't do nothing like that. That is awesome. But I have a separate question for you. I know you have a team, right? I'm starting to get more busy, Andrew, and what would be the best advice? I think this is more of a personal question. I'm gonna take advantage because I know you have an awesome team. What would be the best advice you can give me? And this is a question for me: is because I need that. I'm gonna start needing leveraging somebody, and I'm looking for, like you said, do I get that person that's been in the business 20 years without the bad habits, or do I get the ones that are young and they're hungry and they're ready to go?
It's a tough question. You can find talent anywhere. You need to find someone who wants to learn and who wants to grow, and you'll find out pretty quick, regardless of how unskilled they are, because you can teach the skills. Almost every human being is capable of being really good, but they have to have some innate desire that comes from within. You can't give it to them. You can't want their success more than them. And a lot of times you will, because you need it. Like, shit, you got overflow, you need help. And that's a recipe for disaster. Because, they say unspoken expectations are just premeditated resentments. You're going to end up resenting these people unless you're so clear on what you want. And I find most agents, most team leaders, this goes from team leader to agent, agent to consumer. If you're not clear on what you want, and if you're not clear on how you want the other person to act, to respond, to move forward, how the hell are they going to be clear? You're not. And most people haven't taken the time to really design, this is exactly what you're going to do to get what you want. And that's the other thing. It's just called, this is more of a leadership thing. It's not what you want. It's what they want. And does that align with what you want? It's a more intense exercise. I used to think all this was bullshit, like mission, vision, values, core principles. It's not. It's really not, because it helps you move forward. You got to get people in the right seats on the bus or get them off the bus, right?
Yeah.
So that's a tricky question. In a perfect world, you'd want an experienced agent who's saying, and I think there's going to be a big opportunity for this too. They're saying, you know what? I thought I was good. I can grow with you. Help me help you. If you can find that person, great. If not, you got to find someone from scratch. It takes more time. You have to take 2 steps back before you can take a step forward. But most guys like you, Alfred, you don't want to take a step back.
Nah.
You'll just get frustrated because they mess something up. And here's the rule I have for myself and for clients. This is the same. Like, my customers kind of sometimes are my agents, right? And the clients, because you have 2 jobs there. You can't get mad at anybody for doing something you didn't tell them they couldn't do.
Got it.
And that's so big because they don't know. So anything that they get wrong is actually your fault. It's blame versus responsibility. Do you want to blame them or do you want to own it? You got to own it. Most people, this job is so filled with rejection and uncertainty. Your life's already filled with that, and you keep tacking on more, and people fold and they get upset and then they do outlandish things. We've all had that. You say something and then on the car ride home, you're like, when they said that, I should have just said this. But you had to get your emotional needs met and make them feel like shit to make you feel better. And it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
So that's a tough question, but if you become the type of person that other people want to be with, because no one's ever going to follow someone that they can't learn anything from.
100%.
And who they don't think care about them. And, this sounds all trite and cliche stuff, but I found it to be very true because I've made a lot of mistakes. I've had a lot of good agents that left. I can't tell you how many $10, $20 million producers that I gave birth to that aren't working with me anymore, but we're friends. I was never a dick to them. We're allies. They'll accept my offers. They'll pay the mish. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. That's funny.
I'm kidding. Disclosure. I don't know if they'll pay the mish. I don't know,
Right.
but I can have this business is about relationships.
Yeah, that is so true. And real quick, I know I don't want to get off Robert's topic. Real quick, just so that it's set in stone, I know we have over 30 people. How important, Andrew, is to script and role play right now, especially when the question comes up, I don't want to pay a buyer agent, or vice versa, the buyer doesn't want to pay the agent. How important is to role play? How do you, in your team, how important do you recommend role playing and scripting it? How important is that?
I think it's very important. And to be honest with you, we don't do it. I don't do it. I know I should do it, but I think about it all day long.
Okay, awesome.
So you can role play with yourself. Common misconception that you have to get a buddy and be easy and say yes to everything I say and make it easy or whatever. however role play goes, you can do it. If you can declutter your mind and just say, I know if they say this, I'm going to say that. And look, when someone asks me, here's like, this is a gem. Okay. I'm not sure if I've ever shared this, but this is, if anyone asks you, why should I hire you? Why should I pay you? Why should we go with you? Any number of those things. There's a million of variations of that, right? The answer is this. I don't know. Maybe you shouldn't. But I'd like to ask you some questions. No, because that's not what a salesperson does.
Yeah.
They're expecting you to say, oh, well, I'm number one and I've done this and this and this and this and this. No. Say, well, I don't know. Maybe you shouldn't go with me. So disarming. It's called a pattern interrupt. You say, but I'd like to ask you some questions to figure out if it makes sense. And look, at any point in time, please raise your hand and say, this isn't going to work out because I do not want to waste your time. And I certainly don't want to waste mine. But I think most often, like, look, we sell 500 homes a year, 2 a day, every weekday. We help a lot of people. You can read the reviews. I think we're probably a good fit, but I don't even know myself. So if it's okay with you, I'd like to go over the 3 components of the 3 contracts and some of the value we bring to the buyers, and then you decide. And I will not be offended. This doesn't have to be weird. You're just trying to buy a house. So I don't want to get in your way. Then they love you for that.
That's awesome.
Give people permission to say, stop talking to me and leave. What a gift. Oh, I don't have to waste my time with this person anymore. Trash.
There you go. I started deleting a lot of follow-ups.
Yeah, people treat, no one has ever woke up in the morning and said, you know what I want to be today? I want to be a real estate lead. I want to get treated like a real estate lead. That's not what they don't say that. But that's what we do. This is a human being who wants what's best for them and their family. And oftentimes, even when they think they know what's best, there's a lot of components of value. And your job is to make their light bulb go off. Oh, shit, maybe there is a better loan program for me. Oh, maybe there is a better way to search for homes than just clicking on Redfin or Zillow. Oh, maybe there is, I should study the components of an offer. And every house is different, right? The components, the way I used to do the buyer's agent thing, to get back to Robert's question, was I had always do this. Anytime someone's talking about buying a house, I said, do you at least know what the 5 components of an offer are? They don't know. They'll say, well, one is the purchase price. That's typically what people are thinking. Then you have closing costs. Have you ever heard that term before?
Yeah.
Do you know what it means? Right. So you break that down. We have your transfer and recordation fees. You're going to put a little property taxes up front, some insurance. That's your money, by the way. Some people call them prepaids. It's all lumped in with closing costs, taxes up front, insurance up front, transfer and recordation taxes. In Baltimore City, it's pretty high. It's 3% split between the buyer and the seller. So that's 1.5% to you. You just to break it out. That's why I like to do everything on pen. Instead of saying, here's my presentation, slide 2. That's lame. You break it out for them. Because then every presentation should be different. Because it's not about you, it's about them. How would I make a presentation about you if I don't know anything about you yet? That would be stupid, but that's what everybody wants. No, I want to do the same thing. It's going to work for everybody. It's not. No, but purchase price, closing costs, contingencies. My job is to protect you. Okay, we're not going to give our power away here. The seller has one house to sell. We can buy whatever we want. So when we make an offer, we put contingencies in there. So we have the right to buy the house. We don't have to buy that house. You should never feel any pressure. I'm going to make sure you don't. So we're going to do this offer properly. Purchase price, closing costs, contingencies, appraisal, financing, home inspection. You guys get that. Deposit, earnest money deposit, and settlement date. Those are the 5 things. Purchase price, closing costs, contingencies, earnest money deposit, settlement date. That's what an offer is. Now, if we go look at 3 homes, and one home is vacant and it's beautiful, and then you like that house, and you also like this other home, but people are obviously living there. We have no idea what the seller wants on these things, but it's probably fair to assume the vacant house, they want you to settle relatively quickly. This person living in this house might need 60 days. So that settlement date piece becomes really important. If we give them what they want on this piece, maybe we get what we want up here, lower purchase price. Maybe they help with some of the closing costs. And by the way, some of that closing costs in this day and age could be used to offset your fee for the buyer's agent commission. Or call them concessions now. So that right there is a great place to start too. So guys, when you guys are looking on Zillow and you see a house for 400K, I know what you guys are doing. Oh man, I wonder if we could get that for 400. No, you say, I wonder if we could get that for 400 with them paying 3% towards our closing costs with a $5,000 deposit, 10 days for a home inspection, 21 days for financing contingency if we settled in 30 days. Now you're talking, you see. Now you're talking like an educated buyer. But this is right in that first buyer meeting. If you're talking about all these little things, now they're saying, that's the guy. This guy actually is giving me something that I care about. He's teaching me. If you can't teach them something, they will not follow you. Unless you're really funny. It's best if you're both. If you can make people laugh, you can make them do anything. But if you can teach them and get them laughing, comfortability's at an all-time high, they like you, they trust you, you're going to be in pretty good shape.
That is awesome, man. Thank you so much for sharing those nuggets. I'm sure Robert.
Hey, there's 30 people following me. Can you follow me on Instagram? I'm trying to get these follower count up. It's at Undum.
Yeah, come on, guys. Let's make sure we follow Andrew.
I got this stuff all day. Yeah, fire away more questions. I'm here.
All right, guys.
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
have questions, drop them in the comments. You should be able to just type or choose everyone at the very top of your chat box. Post those questions, and a lot of nuggets, a lot of value, Andrew, especially about what when you talked about the teams. Of course, we're here for the NAR settlement stuff, right? I was just talking to one of our agents yesterday, and I think setting up clear expectations with your team member is so important. And just a quick conversation sometimes doesn't cut it. You know, I suggested, hey, put it in writing. Put it in a binding contract so that there are no wrong expectations, because you know exactly what you want. Anything that's clear will not end up in issues. All that 5-step are in the purchase contract. Just no one ever takes the time to discuss or point out to the buyer or borrower. Paul is basically rephrasing what you just mentioned, Andrew, with the 5 things that you want to cover. I think now more so than ever, it's more important to understand that if you're not going to be putting in the time and the work to provide that value, sitting down with those buyers and going through this whole explanation and building that report, you're going to stay behind. You're going to be in the back. Now, with that said, though, doing this with every single buyer, right, especially you building a team, how scalable is that going to be? And how do you make it better? Like, how do you make it better so that, because I mean, now let's say, for example, you have to spend 30 minutes, an hour with buyers, right, to explain this whole process. You're not just pawning them off to your lender, so you're not even going to know whether they qualify or not. How do you manage all that stuff?
Well, I don't think it's scalable, for one, and that's a good thing because it's dynamic. It's a fluid environment. How you talk to somebody that you meet at an open house will be different than how you talk to somebody that you met at the bar. Oh, my sister's thinking about buying a house. It's different than if you get someone to come to your office and they're serious, they want to talk about it. So it's not, you have to be able to, again, unconsciously competent, try to give them what they need in the moment. It's not, we're not in a vacuum. What agents would love is say, hey, every time I get a buyer, I'm going to sit down and they're going to want to sit down at my office and let me talk at them for an hour to make sure they understand this. That's not the case. If they don't want to hear it, don't say it. But so you have to get permission. Okay. You have to get permission to go over this. I like to call this an upfront contract. This is verbal. Okay. It's not a contract, but you want to give, if you really want to give people what they want, and look, a lot of times people don't know what they want, but you still got to try to give it to them. Just like when Steve Jobs pulled this out of his pocket and he goes, I made a phone so sexy, you're going to want to lick the buttons off of it. There's not even a button on here. No one knew they wanted that. You didn't know. Everyone had their BlackBerries say, you want this? Boom. So you have to show them what they want. But how you do that is anytime you're meeting with somebody, after you have a little bit of rapport, you can't come out of the gates, guns blazing, and start dropping knowledge on them. You say, what types of things would you like to go over in order to make the best use of your time? That's what you ask a buyer. Hey, is there anything like, what types of things would you like to have some comfortability around in order to make the best use of your time today? what you're getting there is their agenda. They'll tell you if you can shut up for a minute, they will tell you what they want. So you have to ask them that. What types of things would you like to go over in order to make the best use of your time? They'll say, hey, well, whatever they say, doesn't matter. You write it down. Doesn't matter what they say. They'll say, hey, we're just looking at buying. We got to get out of the school. We like the area. We're just trying to figure out whatever. They'll hit a bunch of things. They'll say, hey, a lot of times, not saying it's the case here, but most buyers have never really fully understood the 3 major agreements that govern a real estate transaction, the 5 steps of an offer, the current market dynamics in this zip code in this county, which is just a relationship between active pendings and solds, and the 7 key steps throughout the timeline of buying a home where we can provide a lot of value. If you have 15 minutes, I'll go over it with you. If not, that's cool. They say, most of them, if they're serious, yeah, they want to know that stuff because it's about them. It's what they care about. You say, cool. So here's what you said. We'll make sure I hit that. We also just gained agreement to talk about all the stuff I want to talk about. Major agreements that govern a transaction, components of value during the process, 5 steps of an offer. Right up front. So this takes 2 minutes. We're going to cover what you want. Here's what I want to talk about. How much time do you have to have today? You always set the time yourself. I have to jump out of here in 45 minutes. Shouldn't take that long. So that way they can't just be like, oh, I got to go. Yeah. Okay, cool. Awesome. Hey, at the end of this meeting, 1 of 2 things are going to happen. You're going to decide for whatever reason, now's not the best time for any number of reasons. And conversely, and more oftenly, we're going to figure out what the next best step is. Sometimes it's coming to the office. Sometimes it's going to look at homes, or maybe we just jump right in and I'll hook you up with some of my mortgage partners. Is that cool with you? Cool. Then, okay, now that 2-minute upfront, we got all that out of the way. You just close them up front. You close them on going over what you want to go over and setting a next step at the end. See, people like to talk about, oh, did I freeze?
You did with the big old.
Yeah, what the hell's that? I'm gonna turn my camera off and on. Hold on.
Oh,
there you go.
That was interesting.
You close them up front by gaining agreement on setting a next step at the end. It's another thing no one does. Same thing with the seller. Same thing with anybody. Same thing with your spouse, anything. Hey, at the end of this conversation, this is what I want to see happen. It's called inspecting what you expect. You got to inspect what you expect. If you can do that, people love to like, I'm a closer, hardcore closer, but really you should be a good opener, because if you can open, you can close. Things that start well tend to end well. Things that start bad, they don't end good either. So you don't want to be a closer, you want to be an opener. If you can open this dialogue in an elegant way that's respectful to them, you're going to be a lot better off. Think about the last time you bought anything. Wouldn't you just want the person to say, hey, dude, is there anything you want from me? Like, just tell me what you want and I'll give it to you, versus, hey, what are you looking for? Blah, blah, like, and they just start going into their thing. Don't do that.
You hear that, Robert?
We do have a question for you, Rebecca. She already followed you, by the way. When meeting with buyers for the buyer presentation consultation, would you recommend to making a pledge to them as their realtor, Andrew?
You know, the pledge is fine. I've seen a lot of those where it says, here's all the things we promised to do. Here's my problem with the pledge, Rebecca. And it's not a bad thing. It's just not my style, but it could work for some people. The pledge, if you look at these things, and I'm sure you've seen them, your office, your brokerage probably has some generic one, right? I call that marketing the mandatories, because here's what those pledges say. I am honest. I am hardworking. I will get back to you, stuff like that. Well, guess what? If they thought you were a lazy liar, they wouldn't be talking to you in the first place. That's mandatory. Yo, oh my God, you're going to get back to me? Geez, thanks. Man, that must be, but it is important, because that's the biggest complaint from NAR studies, that people don't communicate. So, but instead of the pledge, because people aren't going to pay you X%, whatever you decide you're worth. I think I'm going to try and stick for 2.5 to 3. they're not going to pay you 2.5 to 3 because you pledge certain things. They're going to pay if they think and they believe they're better off going with you versus going at it alone versus going with the other agent that they talk to. And they do talk to other agents. That's the only way. I want them to pledge to me, not I pledge to them. And I don't expect them to unless I can show them this avalanche of value where I'm gonna hook you up and save you big on the mortgage. I'm gonna teach you about this market. I'm gonna make your offer solid as shit. I'm gonna drive your closing costs down, not only through negotiation, but through my relationships. I'm gonna get you a reissue rate on your title insurance. My inspectors are gonna give you discounts. I have a whole home services ecosystem that I'm gonna put together on your behalf to make sure everything is taken care of. This is going to save you tens of thousands of dollars. I mean, shit, my negotiation alone is worth 2 points. If you don't think I can save you 10 when I'm talking to the listing agent, just don't hire me. But they're not, you have to be so confident to say that. You don't blink. You're staring right through them. Navy SEAL sniper, center mass. Because if you're not, they're going to be like, this guy's full of shit. Because there's a fine line between confident and cocky. And I know some people are like, this guy's an asshole. That's just how I do it because I believe it. And if you get really good at this and you're fluid in how you talk about the market research, the whole search process and how the IDX works and how MLS works and expireds and coming soons and how builder listings work and all your loan options and how you gather intel. Once you find a property you like, what a great agent does is we know we get paid in direct proportion to the information we gather, not the information we give. I will gather everything about this house forensically. What did they buy it for? When did they buy it? What type of loan did they get? Why are they moving? How long has it been on the market? What's the days on market for their house versus days on market in the area? What's the list to sales price ratio in the zip code? How many showings have they had? What are they looking for? Does that seller have any critical dependencies on time frame and pricing? We gather information so we can structure an offer where you're going to win, but they still get what they want. See, if most agents don't do this because they're driving DoorDash, because they don't do this all day, every day. So if you're not super fluid with how you're delivering that, you don't need a presentation. You need to draw it out on a piece of paper, just like this. Just draw it out. This is what we're going to do. Ba-boom, 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 ba-boom. You say, what I'd like to do, and you want them to pledge to you. That's what they're doing. If they sign a buyer agency agreement, they're pledging to you. And then, of course, I'm not saying you can't use it, but ancillary say, oh, by the way, our company guarantees all this stuff too. But I just think that's a little bit weaker than you saying, this is what you got with me. And people have a great BS detector. I wouldn't advise you saying any of that unless you believe it and you're going to do it. Because the fastest way to ruin your career and why 87% of agents already fail in a short period of time, and that's going to go up, is because they don't do any of this. And they don't believe it. You know, they don't believe that they can deliver on that stuff. So that's a personal problem. That's not your client's problem. That's your problem. Don't make your problem someone else's problem.
Damn right. Well said, Andrew. I think there's another question right there, huh, Robert?
There is, let me see. When negotiate, you can read that too, Andrew, right? I'm just gonna read it out loud.
Yeah, I got it. It says, and I have another question. When negotiating with buyers on the buyer representation agreement, how would you explain you charge 2 to 3% for your services, and how would you input it so they know it's negotiable and they have options to get buyer's agents compensation paid by the seller, lender, or even the buyers themselves? See, Rebecca's asking the good questions. See, these are so tricky because they're so new. And my answer on this could change in 2 months after. Who knows what? I'm sure there's going to be some disruption coming from other companies, which I love because the best trained teams love a muddy field. We're going to be on offense the whole time. So when you get to that point, if you've already initially said, hey, there's these 3 agreements, and you value, and you say a question like that you want to be almost rhetorical, you want them to say yes, which is, do you think if we did all these things, you'd end up getting a good deal? Yes? Okay, cool. Then you pull out that buyer's broker agreement, and I draw on there. I say, here's how it's worked for 150 years. There's a listing agent, LA, and a seller. And then over here, we have the buyer's agent, which I'd love to be for you, and you, the buyer. The listing agent gets the seller to agree to a commission. Typically, historically, that was between 5 and 6%. Let's just say 6 for easy math. The listing agent has a 6% commission, and they agreed to give the buyer's agent half of it. Very simple. So I was getting 3. Well, they just made that's illegal. That is the change. The listing agent can't pay me, the buyer's agent, which is unfortunate. So the buyer's agent can either get paid from the seller directly or from the buyer directly. But it's the same pot. All the money in the transaction is coming from the buyer to the seller. You're buying their house. And the agents are just here to be advisory in capacity and help them get it done. So every comp you see, have you ever heard that word comps? It's a stupid word. We made it up. Comps, every house you're seeing that's sold that's comparable, that sales price had that 6% baked in. Every one of them. So now the question is, if the listing agent can't pay me, I have to be able to ask the seller for it with your permission. And if the seller won't pay, then you can decide to pay me. We can finance it. We can pay a little bit more. But here's what you need to know. The seller, almost every time, 99% of the time, they only care about what they net if they accept your offer. Just like fast forward 10 years when you maybe sell the house. You get all these offers. You're going to want the one that puts the most money in your pocket, right? Yeah, that's what these sellers want. So I can either ask the seller to pay me, or we can increase the sales price a little bit and have the seller pay me, or you can pay me directly, or you can finance the closing costs. There's any number of things, but we don't need to go into that right now because it's going to be different on every house, like I explained. Once I gather all the information, we'll be able to put this together. I just need permission to operate with agency on your behalf so I can gather and bring you back the information. At the end of the day, you're going to make all the decisions. But just know, and this is how I do it, and this is what the LA Times try to get me on, which is just know I need to be guaranteed that I'm going to get 2.5% either way. Now, look, if the seller won't pay and the house doesn't work out, then maybe we don't offer on that house. That's going to be up to you. So that's that difficult conversation that you're just going to have to, I think the industry is going to get a lot better and you're going to learn a lot based on a lot of these situations.
I think, like you're saying, people are just going to get comfortable understanding that things have changed, and not just agents, but buyers and sellers. Buyers are probably going to get comfortable paying out of pocket for compensation. And it may be 2 months, 3 months down the road, a mute point going forward where you don't have to worry about it too much, but we don't know. And
well, here's the thing about change. Well, you know what? Jeff Bezos had this great thing when they said, Amazon was getting rolling. They said, so Jeff, like, what do you see changing? What's changing in the online marketplace world? And he said, there's so much changing. I don't like to focus on what's changing. I like to focus on what's not going to change. And he said, people are always going to want to get stuff quicker, faster, and cheaper. I don't care what changes, right? And that's where Amazon Prime, that everyone loves that. So in our world, you say, yeah, there's a ton of changes, but I'd even tell the client, if you're the buyer, and say, you know, I know there's 2 things that aren't going to change. The sellers are going to want to net as much money as they can. And buyers are better off having a seasoned professional navigate this environment, because this is contracts, power players, and sharks out here. So that's not going to change. Just how I get paid is going to change. And you just need to be okay with that. Otherwise, it might not be a good fit. I take it away from them. Let them shut you down instead of you trying to overcome objections, which is the opposite of what all the training is. No, they say this, you just object. Overcome. Your job is not to overcome. If you're always overcoming objections, you're not providing enough value. I'm not saying you can't. You got to know how to dance. I don't say follow just as soon as they give you